Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to recap the UFC BJJ 1 event, Road to the Title. And we are also going to preview Polaris, the women's squads event. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, joined with the co-host,
Miranda.
Hey, Miranda.
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. We're just coming off of actually coaching and being at Liquid Swords this last weekend. So we've seen a lot of each other the past couple of days. So it's good to have you back in.
It was also very hot and very
weird. That event was very hot, and then it was interesting all around. My wife Rachel has a quintet event this coming weekend, and so we trained in the morning, and it was hot at that gym.
Yeah.
Then previously Liquid Swords was the previous day. That was hot. That was a super hot event. Then the next morning went to a gym about an hour away to train with her team. It was hot. Yeah. And then hosted our open mat at night, and it was hot. I'm just like, I'm ready to not be hot at jiu-jitsu for a couple of days now. So it's good to be back in the studio. We have AC here, so that's nice. Hopefully you cannot hear it. If the thing goes off in an hour, it'll be great for audio. So let's really we do have some big news. As Miranda has written news here. Fionn Davis is out of the Polaris GP. We'll get more into that when we go on to the preview of Polaris this coming week. Super unfortunate. If you want to read more into why she's pulled out, what's going on, you can read that through kind of Fionn's story. I don't want to kind of speak for her reasons and rationale. Sucks to see her out of it because I was really amped to see her potentially take on Krikorian and really the other women in that team. She was talking about not going to be competing at it. Now she's out of it completely. So it's unfortunate. And so we'll talk about some of the other changes to that event. Miranda, have anything else on that?
Nope.
And then there has been a CJI bracket announced for the women.
Yes.
Did we talk about that last week?
Yes, we did.
Okay. I'm super jazzed for that because we're hopefully going to book our stuff and accommodations and flights tomorrow because Tuesday's the cheaper day for flights.
Yeah.
So I've posted nothing in our group to get that done. So we're hopefully going to iron that out.
We'll figure
I talked to my
out.
family. I'm in California, so I have more information after the show that we can do. So let's move into the recaps. I have no other news. Do you have any news?
Do you say who was added to the ladies bracket, or are you just going to say the bracket?
Oh.
Adele Fornerino was added to the CJI
Sorry,
bracket.
I thought that we talked about that. That's when I looked at you and went, hey, did we talk about that last week? You went, yeah, we did. I was like, awesome. So.
Oh, no, I meant we talked about the bracket because they added Helena Krikorian, and now they've added Adele.
So 2 of the 4 right now are Helena Krikorian and Adele Fornerino.
Yes.
That is jumping. That's phenomenal. You have potentially the second best or best woman in the world, depending on what rule set you're in, between her and Fionn with Adele. And then you have your number 2 at under 66 kilos in Helena Krikorian. Pretty good bracketing. Very happy to see at least half of the ladies in there so far. If that is any indication of the high quality of talent that we're going to get for the rest of the CGI bracket, I am super jazzed to fly out to Vegas for it.
Yep.
So now that is done with news, Miranda, unless I'm missing anything else.
No.
Let's move on to the UFC BJJ Road to the Title. It's on YouTube daily. It's on the UFC's YouTube page. It's free. It's pretty fun. It kind of reminds me, it is essentially the Ultimate Fighter format with a bunch of jiu-jitsu guys for 1 week. There's a new episode every day. We're recording this, I think, 5 hours after episode 7 or 8 streamed.
Yeah. 8 came out today at noon.
Yeah. And that 8 was Doederlein versus Carlos Henrique and Varela versus Davis Asare. It's honestly, I'm having a lot of fun watching it. And a lot of times I'm having teammates in the gym that are watching it and talking to me about it. And it's been really funny to kind of be a day behind it and have stuff spoiled for me and have the gym, because it's free, it's on YouTube, there's good names, there's good production. It's a pretty good event.
I would have liked a little more training and a little less about your background and your girlfriend and how much you love her.
Yeah, I don't.
No offense.
The longer we do this sport, the more I really want more training stuff and but I understand if the UFC knows how to build a more general viewership. That's you need to kind of have storylines. That's how kind of all modern TV works. You build storylines with people. You give a name you've never seen. Now you give them a reason to watch.
I think if you only have a 30-minute episode and you do literally 2/3 of it as your
as your character background.
Yeah, then that's a little.
But that's like with like Wipeout and like that's most of those shows nowadays. Like every singing competition or like a lot of those are mostly a background show. And
Yeah,
then
but
like
I don't care about
I
that.
agree. That's why I don't watch it. That's
I'm
why
not
I don't
watching it
watch
for
most
that
of those.
reason.
I'm watching them for that hot fire jujitsu, which we saw.
Or I want to see how they're getting coached or what they're being told to do to prepare for
That
ex-competitor.
That'd be way more interesting to me to like hear the behind the scenes of like you have Mikey or Harrison with a guy that he may or may not know that well and talk about the dynamics of a matchup, what they're looking for. How like that for me, kind of the inside baseball, the inside fight is way more interesting to me than a lot of like the interpersonal dynamics. Which the further and further I get into the sport, I think I'm maybe in the minority a little more, just not really caring as much about that, but. Those are my druthers. Let's get into the piece of the show we actually talk about, which is jiu-jitsu. Last week on the show, we talked about...
The first match.
Did we talk about Isaac versus Keith last match or no?
No, we didn't.
No.
Because this was the first match. It says 2 because it's the second episode, right?
I think so.
It's
Oh, we talked about
episode
Tackett
number
versus
2.
Aaron Wilson. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. So this is match number 2.
Yeah, this is match number 2.
This all makes sense now.
For weekly stuff that comes out every day, for this show being a weekly show on our end, it always makes me confused. Like, usually we are covering one instance of an event.
Yeah.
For this, we've had 6 additional episodes.
I think, in all honesty, I think most of this was run on at least one day or like maybe a couple days, but it doesn't seem like they did like every day. It wasn't live.
It wouldn't seem like you're in the house for a day, and it seems like it was a very quick shoot.
Yeah, like a weekend maybe or something like
which
that.
Which I kind of like. Like,
well, you only had so many matches. Like these guys have these many matches in a day.
More than that in a day.
Yeah.
This is like an afternoon. This is less than day one of trials for most of these guys.
This is less than we sat through in 1,000,000 degrees.
That was
because that was like 40 matches.
It was 30. I think it was 30 total. So match number 2. Match number 2. Isaac Doederlein, number 8 from Team Micah Musumeci versus Keith Krikorian, who's number 1, and we're in the lightweight bracket. We talked about the seeding last week. I didn't realize until this match came up, this is Doederlein's first professional nogi match.
Yeah.
And I guess I just didn't realize that. And it's very kind of, it's not odd nowadays when like you get a piece of information like that, like Doederlein's a former world champion, like we've been covering him for years and years. I've watched his entire career. I guess I had never realized that we've only ever talked about him in the gi. For me, he just seemed like a generally all around guy, does really well in the gi. I didn't really think about his nogi accolades as much. And then this is his first professional nogi match versus Keith Krikorian. Again, 4-time trials medalist, trials winner at one point in there as well. The ADCC veteran that is a hell of a first kind of nogi matchup. And again, he trains nogi with Mikey Musumeci, so he's very competent. But it was just wild to not realize that. And then Doederlein comes in, and he's actually able to beat Keith. This was sort of the dichotomy of this match was Doederlein looking like he wanted to be Mikey Musumeci with a lot of his entries into the legs. Keith having good countering and really aggressive and forward passing, but Doederlein just being an absolute monstrous guard player.
Yeah.
At like one of the highest level guard players in the sport. Because again, he's featherweight or light featherweight champion in the gi. You have to be one of the best guard players to ever live to contend in that division with the passers and the other guard players there. So it makes sense. Krikorian, I don't think is ever really able to get around Doederlein's guard for any significant amount of time.
No, he can get around the guard, but he can't really hold him in any position.
Doederlein can invert, get his legs back and forth. It's the classic light featherweight, really even not light featherweight match is the passer, they can't get around fully and settle on the guard player, and then Doederlein now with kind of the influence of Mikey, more and more going into the legs. And we've seen Doederlein do this throughout his career, but going into the legs, Keith having phenomenal, pretty bulletproof leg lock defense. Doederlein a lot of times looking for like a sock lock or like the lower sort of ankle locks, and not really as much even on the heel hook side of things, like a lot more
straight
ankle locks, which makes sense given that Doederlein's, again, a gi world champion. Like the heel hooks for him primarily competing, or she only ever competing up to this point professionally in the gi. I think he's had other matches, but not like pro matches in no gi. It makes sense to him not want to go into and like throw a bunch of heel hooks on Keith, who has been competing only in no-gi professionally since he was a purple belt. Like it actually, in thinking about this more, the dynamics of why Isaac is attacking like he is with all the straight ankle locks make way more sense just given his background.
Yeah.
I didn't really put that together until just now. So that's the dynamic of the match. Keith is more aggressive on top, looking to pass, but just Isaac has, I'm going to say, he has more bites for longer on leg locks than Keith.
Towards the end of the third round, he gets Keith in a pretty deep ankle lock, and then Keith kind of grabs his own ankle lock, and then they both kind of scream at each other.
Yeah, Keith switches over to a heel hook, but his knees are a little flat. It's the ending sequence. Keith kind of yells, which is kind of uncharacteristic for Keith, but he's trying to put a stamp on it.
It was a little more aggressive than the normal Keith, I think.
Yeah, Keith is usually pretty mellow almost. I think would be the right way to put it. So it was really interesting to see that come out on camera from Keith, because it's just uncommon from Keith to do that. And then Isaac's able to take is it a split or is it a decision? That's a straight decision.
That's a straight decision.
Yeah, straight decision. Moves on. Again, I would have loved. You want to talk about bracketing now? Fuck it. Let's talk about bracketing now.
Okay.
I thought the way the bracketing was done was based on team selection, where the first round is you put your 8 seed versus your 1 seed from the opposite teams, which is why when they did the selection episode, everyone was selected as they were.
Yeah.
So you could have it bracketed this way. It is super weird to me that you would put Keith Krikorian versus Isaac Doederlein in the first round. On the same side of the bracket, put Carlos Henrique versus Gianni Grippo. In my head, again, in the tournament that's 1 seed, 8 seed, 4 seed, 5th seed, in my head, those are your 1 through 4 for your tournament, for your lightweight division. It's really weird to see those guys on the same side of the bracket.
I think it was predetermined. The bracket itself was predetermined.
Yeah.
So like the first pick goes in, the second pick goes in, and they did it that way. So because it was done that way, it wound up being as like
but it's just weird because essentially when you put so correct me if I'm wrong.
And some of them were bracketed. Like Isaac Doederlein was number 8, which technically he really wasn't a number 8. It was just he had never done
a professional no-gi match. So correct me if I'm wrong here, my understanding would be essentially when they gave the guys the rankings, this is how they were going to have to be bracketed. We would have technically known the bracketing beforehand. You would have just swapped the teams, essentially.
No, it's like Keith. So the first pick, I'm trying to think who was picked. Tackett was picked first. And then
but he was the number 1 seed. So they did it.
No,
it's by picking him by
okay,
seed.
look at the. If we look at this, okay, Tackett was picked first
in welterweight
by Green, and then the first lightweight was picked, which was Isaac Doederlein. So both of those were done, and then we go to the second. The second was Andy Varela was picked, and then if you go up, I think it was. I think it's by the order they were actually physically picked.
Okay, because
I don't think it's not your typical bracket.
Because this looks like the typical bracket because you have 1, 8, 4, 5, and then you have 2, 7, 3, 5, which is typically how you have a bracket.
Okay, well maybe that's how it is. But
it was just really weird for the lightweight bracket to have, in my eyes, your 4 strongest competitors pre-bracketed all on the same side.
You're also having people bracket jiu-jitsu that might not know.
Yeah, might not be as into it as maybe we are. But it was just a really interesting kind of fold here. I was kind of disappointed to see Keith taken out so early in the first round by Doederlein because the bracketing was like, that was just weird bracketing. I would expect that match to happen in a semifinals or finals. But again, we've kind of walked through that. It happened. Doederlein takes that. Next match, we had Davis Asare, number 3 on Team Mikey Musumeci versus Austin. Give me Austin's last names. Oranday. Team Harrison.
Yeah. They go up to slap hands, and then Davis shoots a double. And takes him down. And then afterwards, he's like, whoops, my bad. I forgot that I was doing that. And, like, he apologizes. He says he apologizes for it.
Yeah, and but it was a funny discussion that happened online about this where it's like, in jiu-jitsu, typically, there's a slap bump to start the match.
Yeah.
Because of how this event starts, it starts you like
you
a
fall
fight.
Or almost like a video game, like you get dropped into it.
Yeah. But because in a fight, like you typically do not, or in a fight, like an MMA fight, you start on opposite sides, and then one guy like lift a hand up and go, and shake his hand at you, and the other fighter either looks at you and gives you the nod.
Yeah.
He either also raises his hand up, or he just looks at you and does nothing, which indicates we are not going to tap gloves. Yeah. In jiu-jitsu, there's not, because fights start standing in front of you. When the fights start, typically what happens is slap out happens right there.
Before the match
So it's this weird, because our sport typically doesn't start like this, there's this weird courtesy that may or may not need to happen. When it was just very funny to see in reality of like Davis Asare knows I'm going to shoot immediately, and because they start at range, Austin's like, okay, we're going to meet together, we're going to slap and bump as is traditionally you do, and Davis just shoots through it. So I don't think it was any ill will behind it. Again, like you're in the rule set to do that, but it was just a very funny like faux pas, because we start suddenly like in a way that no other tournament starts you, like away from each other, and you run down to each other and you meet. It was just a very funny kind of, when you saw it live, you went, that's weird to see what just happened.
He's like, I'm going to slap here. Nope, double leg.
Double leg. And because historically when that happens, it's like, you're a dick. But this was just like a weird, doesn't happen in jiu-jitsu, and so what do you do here?
Or this is the shit we do to each other when we're in the gym.
Yeah.
You know?
You shoot under a slap. I never do that. If you do that to me, I'm like, I see this is the kind of round we're going to have now.
Oh,
I don't do it. But
I have people do it to me.
Let's move into the actual kind of dynamics of the match here.
There are no real dynamics. Davis does his double leg. He goes into the legs. And Mikey says Oranday leaves his right leg hanging when he goes after your legs. Go after said right leg. And what does he do?
And Davis goes, bet. And then gets it, and then gets a straight ankle lock out of that. It was really cool to see Mikey key in on that and go, hey, this thing is going to happen.
Well,
when it happens,
he also rolled with everybody when he before he picked a team. He rolled with everybody.
That's
there's
crazy.
a possibility he was really rolling to figure out if he wanted you on a team and also how to beat you.
I mean,
at the same time,
really, you should be doing that as a coach. Like, hey, man, you're gonna roll with all the guys. Why would I not take as much information as possible from everyone so that I can know if I'm coaching for you or against you, what your strengths or weaknesses are? You know, it was just a really interesting little kind of view into, Mikey Musumeci really is very in tune with this game and very well qualified to coach a team and to be a world champion. To pick up on things like that, hey, he's going to leave his foot here, and then Davis Asare going, okay, cool, you've told me he's going to leave his foot here, and then be able to get it. So that was that match. Davis Asare moves on there. Next, anything else on that?
Nope.
Next match, we had Carlos Henrique versus Gianni Grippo. You have one bullet point here, and you have a couple bullet points for the match, but the one I like the most is listening to Mikey coach in Portuguese.
Yeah, because his Portuguese is pretty good to coach in.
His Portuguese is good. Mikey Musumeci frequently gives, when he does, he used to do posts on Instagram, and I was on Instagram more often. And he would post half in English, or he posted in English, and then at the bottom would be a Portuguese translation. Yeah. And by all accounts, in listening to him speak Portuguese and seeing people converse with him in Portuguese, it is fluent Portuguese. Yeah. It is. He speaks Portuguese. Yeah. And it was just funny to hear, it comes up occasionally where you see Mikey Musumeci speak fluent Portuguese, and you're like, I always forget that you can do that.
Well, see, when I first met Mikey, it was a him and Kaitera seminar, and they only spoke in Portuguese to one another. So I had no idea. I really had no idea that Mikey was not Brazilian.
That's so funny.
I just assumed that he was Brazilian.
And then you hear him speak English, you're like,
well, I heard him speak both, and that was, but you wouldn't, yeah. I was like, oh, he's just,
This is, again, for the UFC, these are all 3-round matchups, or up 3 rounds unless there's a sub. This is a leg battle in round 1. Carlos. Gianni is
paying.
Have you ever seen a Gianni Grippo match? This is what it looks like. Johnny trying to get under you, trying to get on top. He's trying to basically sweep you to top position. Yeah. and then be able to go into mount and then go to his head and arm, or potentially go to the back if you're going to give him the back.
He even said that's what he wanted to do.
I mean, if you've watched a Gianni match in the last 5 years.
I've watched IBJJF matches enough to know that's what Gianni does.
That is historically what Gianni Grippo does. So it makes, for us, it's not surprising at all that he would come into this match and be like, hey, man, I want to go to the head. And you're like, I can imagine, Gianni. It's like, why? I've watched you for the last couple of years, and that's historically, it's like, hey, Junior Ocasio, I'm going to go and try to footlock him and Z-lock him. You're like, Junior, I can imagine that you would try to do that given your track record of what you typically have high-level success with.
Yeah.
And then so Gianni, again, it's a very back-and-forth match, mostly into the legs, with Carlos doing a nice job of defending, checking down, getting away, and really not letting Gianni ever fully lock into anything.
I think we learned a long time ago not to let Gianni lock into anything.
Do not... The very famous match Gianni had with our buddy. Don't let Gianni get on your legs.
Yeah.
So second round, Carlos comes out a little harder.
Yeah.
And a little more quickly, and you can tell that he does not want Gianni Grippo under him as much.
Yeah.
And he really wants to stay in front. He's like, okay, I cannot deal with Gianni Grippo underneath me. I cannot. And so you saw like a tactical change there with the way that he was addressing Grippo's guard. He wanted to be on Gianni's body.
Yeah.
And like chest to body. And he has an entry here. He finishes on north-south anaconda. Not quite north-south anaconda, like a variation of an anaconda on Gianni Grippo. But the way that he sets it up is really uncommon.
Yeah.
Because most people from this position, he's in Gianni Grippo's half guard, and he essentially jumping passes through into the head and arm.
Yeah.
Most people in this position do not elect to go for the anaconda. The only difference between the anaconda and the darce is the darce, the hand you pass through under the arms, the hand ends up next to the neck.
Yeah.
For an anaconda, the hand passes down and under to the armpit.
Yeah.
Traditionally, most people always go for the darce here, the jumping darce, because it's easier to loop under and basically rise the hand up next to the neck because you're diving that way. For him to go into the anaconda from this position is really uncommon. The entry that he uses is like, it's just not something we see a whole lot of, because he goes to the finish line. I went, and he's in an anaconda.
And he goes to finish over the top rather than beneath.
Which makes sense if you're going for the anaconda, because now you're under the arm. And so the darce traditionally you can kind of pull down into it. But the anaconda, because you're under the shoulder, like you will have to go over the top. It's just, we don't see a lot of jumping through the guard to finish the anaconda. It is a very uncommon choke. The closest thing we see usually is Tyne and Dalper doing it with that like mounted guillotine sit-through variation. Or Hugo will do the same thing, where it's like they kind of sit back into like an arm and guillotine from that position, or from like a mounted arm and guillotine, or you sit out the back like a tech through, and they get the arm and guillotine from that, almost like it would be a bulldog choke with the arm in. It's just an uncommon finish, and Gianni like taps. And what I really appreciate about Gianni here, he taps kind of lightly, and then Carlos Henrique kind of half lets go, and the referee can now see where Gianni is, and Gianni gives him Gianni could absolutely have Brazilian tapped that and like cause a weird restart, and it would have been one of those like, I think he tapped, but I don't know. It would have been those like, I think he tapped. But I appreciate Gianni Grippo being like a good competitor and going, I tapped. Like that was
but then legit. You can also tell Gianni's going out because he like viciously taps after a while.
Yeah, he's which is good. Like again, I appreciate, if you're gonna tap in a pro match, man, there's cameras and stuff, just tap. And I appreciate Gianni Grippo for being like an honest, like veteran game competitor to go, yeah, man, you got me, and move on. So again, really uncommon to see an anaconda finish. Like we see a couple of them a year, maybe. I don't remember talking about one last year at a high level match.
Anacondas?
Yeah. They're just uncommon. Which you figure they would be way more common considering how prevalent darces are.
Yeah.
They're not.
I think I've always found that wrestlers find anacondas because it's very similar to, and I'm trying to think what position they have. They have a position that's very similar to that they do in wrestling in order to put you on your back. I know what you're talking about. So they wind up, when they realize that it's that same position, but all they have to do is then slide the arm up and choke.
There's like one change they make it like, oh.
And they pick it up like freaking crazily, like, and then they hit it on absolutely everyone.
It is very you're right. It is something traditionally,
and I can't
see wrestlers hit more than anyone else.
I even like researched it to make sure that I was correct in saying that, just because I've seen so many wrestlers go straight
I
into
think we
anaconda.
had this conversation a couple years ago on the podcast, and I think a couple years ago we also couldn't remember what the wrestling move was called.
I looked it up and then I forgot as soon as I looked it up.
So next round we have Elijah Carlton versus Jason Nolf. Jason Nolf out of Kingsway.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this when he made the move over to Kingsway, which
Well,
is
he owns his
formerly
own
New
gym,
Wave.
but it's a wrestling gym.
Right.
But it's outside of
Austin. So
yeah.
it makes sense that he would train with like the New Wave guys or Kingsway. Well, it's gonna take me a couple weeks to get that right. Kingsway guys. This is really Elijah Carlton being a jiu-jitsu guy and
going after a wrestler.
And it's just like, hey man, the wrestler's gonna come into you super square. He's gonna push. That's how Nolf plays. That's what Nolf wants to do. He's gonna leave his arms out. The Choi bars are gonna be there. And again, to Nolf's credit, man,
he jumps a couple
flying triangle kind of.
and steamer locks.
Yeah,
Right.
Nolf is hunting
Yeah.
hard for that top side of steamer lock. But again, Carlton's a pretty good leg locker. Like he's not a guy that we see get leg locked with a huge degree of frequency on PGF, which is again the majority of matches we've talked about for Elijah are going to come off of way back in the day submission underground SUG, and then in PGF where he's really made a big name for himself. 2 or 3 time winner of that in the earlier seasons, I think. Before Aiken won the last one. Nolf is gunning into these steamer locks, but you can kind of tell that Carlton is like, that's annoying, but I'm like gonna kind of deal with it because Nolf. You can tell that Nolf doesn't quite have the experience in that to be able to control the knee the way that he needs to break Carlton's foot off. And Carlton's game enough to kind of know that too, to be able to eat it enough to work positional offense.
Well, and a lot of those foot locks from that position, you just have to invert under and your foot's fine.
And Carlton's a big guy, but very comfortable making
easy
the
to get
invert
out
under.
of if you don't have any kind of control to the body of the person.
And Nolf isn't going to hop his legs over to sit to his butt because he's a wrestler and he still seems to be at the point of the career where he does not want to play off his back at all. And again, why would you want to versus Carlton? Like you're a better positional top wrestler. Why on earth would you decide to play versus a straight jiu-jitsu guy that has pretty good passing? You know, tactically it makes sense why he played the way he did, but Carlton is just consistently putting up offense with the Choi bar in the first round, and then in the second round, Nolf goes for a fireman, Carlton goes for the back there, and you see like Nolf like gunning through, but sort of not running out of ideas, but you can see Carlton has sort of figured out what Nolf wants to do, and figured out what's going to be available for him,
and that Nolf doesn't take all the space away when he crowds him, so then he can still like invert up over him,
get his hips up, get over. Like it's a master class, and Carlton's always hard to hold down anyway. Like most guys struggle to hold Carlton down.
But there was also when they were training before the match, which is why the little star note is there. There was also Mikey had went over a bunch of stuff with Jason Nolf to make sure that Elijah couldn't get into his legs. And I think it was keeping his hips back and keeping foot control.
It makes sense because you're a wrestler. Carlton's a good leg locker. And you can't be static there.
Yeah, and I want that for other individuals.
But Nolf did a good job here not letting Carlton get anything but upper body for the most part. It goes to the decision at the end. It was close. That was
a split.
It was a split decision. Watching it, I thought it was pretty reasonable to give it to for Carlton, especially because at the end of the third round, Carlton is in a triangle armbar, or has Nolf in a triangle armbar, and then Nolf doesn't slam him out of it, but the round finishes right after the slam, and there's just no.
He has his back at one point too, and there was a lot of good openings for Carlton.
I was almost surprised it was a split. I maybe to watch it again, but I was a little bit surprised it was a split.
Well, but I don't think any of us know exactly how the scoring system
there's that too.
fully works either.
Obviously, because I'm surprised it's a split.
Because if it's UFC and it's not jiu-jitsu, it's more MMA based scoring, then your top player automatically gets precedent in situations. So then if you have Elijah throwing up arm bars that maybe a casual fan doesn't really understand,
or a judge,
and you have Jason Nolf grabbing the foot locks that look like they're decent, but
gunning into them from the top position. Yeah.
Then
no, I see
it
that
comes
now.
off a little bit. It comes off looking a little bit differently than
Good catch there for like, hey, Maine, it's not straight up jiu-jitsu rules. It is a UFC jiu-jitsu rules.
Yeah.
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
Fury rules, as we put it.
Yeah, but sort of, yes.
Yeah. So one note here, in the slam, Carlton basically says after that he's injured. And so he actually gets subbed out. So Nolf continues, even though he loses the split, Carlton gets out from an injury from this match. And so Nolf moves on to the next round, even though Carlton took the decision here. Yeah. So just a note for what will happen later, what other matches we'll bring up here. Kayvon, next match we have
Kayvon.
That's
why I wrote it Kayvon.
You did it phonetically, and then immediately I messed it up.
Well, because
figures.
I know that's how it's said. I've been around the gentleman, and the fact that I messed it up the first time on last one was pretty bad. So I was like, I'm doing this phonetically, so I can't mess it up anymore. It's Kayvon.
Kayvon Gonzalez versus, it was supposed to be Josh Cisneros. Josh Cisneros had a weight cut injury, essentially. Passed out during a weight cut.
Yeah.
And so Kobe Fair subs in.
They don't really say that. They say he's unable to make weight, but I think if dude is on the floor,
passed out and getting an IV, and they showed a picture of Cisneros' face
on the floor,
dude. And so, even when the paramedic was there giving the IV, they had a close up of Cisneros' face there for a second, and Josh looked rough, which sucks, man. But they said he was 7 pounds up, and this is what Cisneros said: 7 pounds up, and then kind of the weight stopped coming off. And I looked at you, Miranda, and I went, if Josh Cisneros was within 7 pounds and he's talking about, he was in the middle of the cut at 7 pounds, does Cisneros walk around at like 170 something? Yeah. Because if you're cutting that much weight to make 55 and you're cutting.
He used to be like 45. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But like in Cisneros, again, he's gotten bigger, but I didn't realize he was
and
as
he's relatively
big
local too, because he's Arizona.
Yeah.
Local
as you can be in Vegas. It was just I didn't really realize how big Cisneros was to have to cut that extreme to get down for something like this. Because again, weight cutting in jiu-jitsu, it's definitely a thing. And it's become more prominent because, again, you get an advantage for being bigger and stronger. And for a big tournament like this, it makes sense you're going to come in as big and heavy as possible because you're going to get the most advantage. It's a huge opportunity to win. One thing that I really don't like is I don't like that Aaron Wilson found Cisneros in the locker room on the floor. Like, that means, and that's the storyline that they put out in the UFC. That means that you are cutting weight without anyone around you, which is never do that.
Yeah.
Just, especially in a pro event like this, especially like, even if you're in a local tournament, like if you're ever cutting any good amount of weight, like you cut weight in Vegas, we had like 3 of us there.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey man,
we were having a party in the bathroom.
We were having a party, you were dying and you were not having a great day. We were having a great time. It was me, Chris, Will, my wife, we were all hanging out there. You were hating everyone.
Yeah, that was
But this is a message to like anyone that's gonna cut weight or your teammates are cutting weight, and it's more than like a little bit. If ever someone's getting in a sauna or a bath to cut weight, be there with that person. Yeah. Weight cut injuries are way more prevalent than they ever should be.
It kind of sucks, and it kind of fucks with your head when you're doing it, especially if for whatever reason you're not losing weight and you're doing it, but you're not, the weight isn't coming off. You need someone there to
push
kind
you,
of
be that guy.
Yeah, and to kind of talk sense into you, because you can get a little bitchy at times.
You can't always. You will always be everyone. You will almost always have to apologize after. I cut to 135 back in like 2016, and my wife went, "Yeah, that's awesome. You're never going to 35 again." And she was like, "Weird." I was like, she goes, "We will not do this again." And I was like, "Okay." And that has been the rule ever. I can go to 45. That's fine. Yeah. But she will not let me go back down to 135 because she's like, "No, we did that once. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that again." And I was like, that's reasonable. So even the nicest of people, I just want to say a quick message about like just safety. If people in your gym or in your team or in your life are cutting weight with a sauna or a bath, or even like if they're out for the run, like just be with a good teammate, be with that person, don't check in on them,
and you don't have to be
there with them.
You don't have to be like in the little teeny tiny sauna with them, like staring at them in their face.
No, but be visible to that person so that if something happens, like, because those injuries are not. they are not as infrequent as you would expect.
Yeah.
They're not common anymore, but they're like, Cicero should have never been found in the locker room face down.
Yeah.
Like, there should have been a guy, especially if he was cutting weight that hard, and it looks like he's cutting weight really hard, you should have a guy there with you doing that.
Aren't there cameras all over that place anyway?
And that's kind of why, but also in the locker room, how much they follow you. I don't know the whole situation, but it's just be there for your teammates and the people around you when they're cutting weight, because it's super dangerous.
Even if they're an asshole.
Yeah, they're gonna be an asshole. You're gonna find someone's, not even their true colors. You're gonna find someone's weight cut colors there.
Yeah.
It'll bring you closer in the long run.
Yeah.
But no, it's just because what will happen a lot of times is people will pass out, they'll hit their head, and you'll have major injuries because they'll just pass out because they're dehydrated, they're overheated, they're hot, and they pass out, and it's just really dangerous. I was really disappointed to see that even in a UFC event, that someone found Cisneros there. It's like, man, I like Cisneros a lot. That's really close. That's closer to an injury. It was portrayed than really should ever happen in a modern sport with professional guys like Cisneros on a team.
But you also have a team of gentlemen that don't really know each other.
Which I understand.
You know what I mean?
Again,
like, these are guys that you might compete against. So do you really want to admit to what you're doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
there's so many X factors here, but dude's cutting tons of weight. No reason he should have been doing that by himself, because it's super not safe to do that. That was more so my point. We can explain around it. My point was, like, no reason that you should ever have a potential weight cut injury like that where someone finds you. It should not ever happen. No matter who you are. Like, hey, man, I'm cutting weight. Cool. We're not the best friends, but, like, I'm not gonna have you die because I didn't, like, okay, this is my evening. So as a result, we have Kobe Fair that comes in off of the Fight Pass card. He's a local. He's out of Couture MMA, or Extreme Couture, which is Randy Couture's gym, which is in Vegas. So they pulled him in.
And he's a 2-time All-American wrestler. Do you know what that means? I learned this weekend what an All-American wrestler means.
I know what it means, but I don't want you to push me further than that.
What does it mean?
It means, fuck me. Okay. My understanding, this is watch the Maine doesn't understand wrestling segment, as again upon us on the podcast.
So do you want me to?
I'll butcher your way through it, and then you can correct me when I'm wrong here. My understanding is, to be an All-American wrestler, you have to qualify for, like, the thing that is after the state championships, which is like the regional championships for, like, to represent your state or whatever your body is that you wrestle out of. After the states,
you have to be in the top 8.
Okay, so I was close.
Of the nation.
Of the nation.
At your weight.
At your weight for your
NCAA.
D1, D2, D3 club, whatever it is. Okay, so it's the top 8 of your,
so it's your top,
whatever you're
it's like
competing.
your top bracket of your NCAA.
Of your weight.
Yeah.
Okay, so every year there's about 300 All-American.
There's a lot more. Like, I thought it was like there was only like 10 All-American. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was a small number.
There's 8 per weight class per division.
And then I realized, like, oh no.
But that's why when people say, like, a D1 All-American, it gives you or a world team member. Like, it's like someone saying it's our equivalent of, not quite our equivalent of, like,
it's a qualifier.
Like a blue belt world champion.
But you're like a qualifier for
blah,
blah, blah, blah.
But like a blue belt world champion and then like an All-American wrestler. Like, the American wrestler thing is a different caliber. But also, if you're a D3 All-American wrestler, it's not D1. So it's all, it gets muddy. But it means at one point, you were one of those dudes in your region, in whatever body you were competing in at the time. So Kobe's a good
I wound up
wrestler.
having a whole conversation about, what's his name? A bunch of UFC fighters that were All-Americans.
Weidman's an All-American.
Weidman was who?
Yep, Weidman's an All-American. I think John Jones at one point was a Jew.
John Jones retired. Did you see that?
I saw that. I got happy and sad at the same time for a multitude of reasons.
Did you see why he retired?
Oh, with a car crash or the other one?
Yeah.
The hit and run again?
A second hit and run.
A second. Please.
He was
second Miranda?
He was
You've missed a couple hit and runs there.
he was allegedly naked from the waist down.
Good for you, John Jones. living your life.
Kind of like the new 28 Years Later movie. You understand that joke if you saw that movie.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm so excited to see it.
The after 28 years, the zombies are naked. Just so you know.
I can imagine that.
Yes.
So sorry, you've thrown me off. You've thrown me off in the retrospective of John Jones's career.
Kevon Gonzalez does what jiu-jitsu gentlemen do, and he gets reverse mount and A blocks the wrestler Colby Fair.
That Yeah, again, leg replacement, like props to Kobe, like didn't look bad. He just looked like he was not prepared to go against a guy preparing for the biggest jiu-jitsu tournament of his entire career. It was really like you did as well as anyone you could have pulled into that. Yeah. It wasn't like another world-class jiu-jitsu guy. Like that was like, honestly, he lasted longer and did better than I thought he was going to do. It was like, oh, cool. Like you were in that for a minute and then a reverse A block. And it was like, yeah, man, I'm a professional fighter that's in the UFC. Like, you got me. You tap me and move on.
It's a weird position, too. If you've never done it before, you don't really understand.
Even if you have done it before. Like, I've gotten A blocked in the last year, and you're just like, I don't really know. Like, I don't have a good defense for it. And I do this.
I did a seminar, and we went over how to get out of an A block from reverse mount.
Well, we have some things to teach me right now.
There is a way.
I bet there's a way. You put me in it right now. I'm gonna I'm probably not gonna give you the right response.
And I don't know I don't know off the top of my head if I can even tell you exactly what it is anymore. I was taught it, but I don't know if I retained it or not.
So moving on to things we do know about. Yeah. Andy Varela versus Nathan Haddad. I love your note for round one. Wrestling.
Well, that's what they did.
It is.
The entire round one was wrestling.
Which props to Haddad, honestly. Like, Andy is low-key a sneaky good wrestler. Yeah. And we talked about it. I remember when I first saw Andy Varela live, was West Coast Trials 2021. We'd seen him on Sug before, and he was like, oh, he's good. He's he's on the level. Like, is he really going to be that guy? And then we saw him, enormous guy, at
170
at 77 kilos for ADCC, and I was like, he is enormous. Also, he is wrestling dudes in a way that a lot of his division is not ready for, not equipped to deal with. So, and it's been a kind of a current thing. If you ever see like a big highlight from Varela, a lot of times it is a blast double, it is a single, it is a switch. It is very competent, high-speed wrestling. So for Haddad to deal with him, Varela, as well as he did for as long as he did, I was pretty impressed with Haddad here. Yeah. And then Varela does what Varela does round two and goes, hey man, that wrestling was great in the first round. I'm going to do what I do to everyone and duck under, back take to rear naked choke. Yeah. And it was
he does like a lot. He gets a collar tie and then he ducks over the opposite side and he doesn't let go of his collar tie.
It's like a swing duck under almost. It's like the duck under they teach you not to do.
And he just jumps up onto your back from it.
And he has great timing on it. And we've seen him do it forever. He's done this forever.
They teach you not to do it, but if you keep your head and your body close enough to them, then it works.
Yeah. And this is one of Varela's main finishing things that he does to a lot of guys. Yeah. And if guys are super high level and aware of it, you can flop to your back before he's able to make the spin. And then you have Andy Varela on top of you, and he'll probably force the turn again. We see that happen frequently enough. But Varela just continues to impress me with how frequently he can get this move going on a lot of high level guys. Yeah. You have an interesting note here as well.
Yeah, there's a coach that's beside Mikey for the whole tournament. His name is Chris Engel, and he actually runs Engel Jiu-Jitsu in Vegas. And I trained at his gym when I was in Vegas a couple years ago. And it was really weird because at that point I was like, I know this guy. I've seen this guy's face before.
It is I've seen very that head. Small.
So then I started looking at him, and he was in Vegas, and I was like, and he's in Vegas. And I started looking. Because, there are a lot of bald white men.
There are a lot. I was going to say a lot of us, but...
With, shiny heads in jiu-jitsu. But
a sport that does not require hair. So, yeah.
No, does not require hair.
So, speaking of small world, we mentioned, I think last week on the show, how small the community was, and it would be at Liquid Swords. And I had a guy come with me at Liquid Swords and was like, didn't know you were local. That was funny. And I was like, oh, man, it was always good. We get those interactions, not... It is 8-9 years of doing this show. It still surprises me every time it happens, even though it happens every couple months.
IBJJF is where I always find people.
Yeah, just hey, you're that guy. I'm like, yeah, I'm here too. And they're like, oh, you're Matt? I'm like, yeah, DC Nova. Or we do commentary at an event. You're like, oh, you're here? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, I love, the community is great. And going, again, I want to make an effort to go. That's why my wife and I went out and trained and go to Liquid Swords. Yeah. It's cool to see the community locally, and it's a cool little nifty community, and it's awesome. So it's just funny to see people you recognize from other times. Oh, I trained at his gym before, and he's out here in Vegas coaching at the UFC BJJ event.
Well, because Mikey,
Oh, yeah.
Mikey had trained in Vegas for such a long time.
Right.
That I'm sure that they all the
Yeah,
black
Mikey
belts
knows all the
kinda-
Vegas
yeah.
guys. That makes sense. So, moving on, we had name's Miranda. You got this.
Danilo Morella versus Mauricio Rios.
Rios.
I was like, and then I was like, that's Mexican. That's not Portuguese. So we will go Rios. Anyway, so this one goes 3 rounds. This is a decision, but it's Danilo mostly in the driver's seat. Kind of
Good footlocks, by the way.
Yeah, going
Which makes
after-
sense given that his wife is Elizabeth Clay.
Yeah.
So if you train with Elizabeth Clay a lot, you're probably going to have good footlocks.
He said she tapped him like 1,000,000 times the first time they rolled.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because Clay has been a footlock monster since she was like 15.
Yeah.
And they just had a baby together, and it makes sense that that she is going to just attack her partner mercilessly with the thing that she is good at.
Yeah.
And so it was what we have not talked about Danilo a ton here. It was really cool to see a lot of the same footlocks that Clay uses, like that reliance on the toe hold, the long leg toe hold that he'll pop in, like very, very similar finishing kind of looks and entries from what Clay used. I just thought it was very funny to go, oh yeah, he uses like a lot of stuff that we've seen Clay use for almost a decade now.
Yeah.
He uses, and it was really cool. Let's see. I think Danilo wins this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Danilo wins this one. So now we are on to the semifinals. Now that comes back, we have Andrew Tackett was going to be versus Elijah Carlton, but Jason Nolf replaces due to Elijah having a shoulder injury, potentially due to the slam.
I don't know if it was shoulder or elbow, because the way he explained it was like elbow, and then it was like shoulder. And then what he was explaining, as someone who has shoulder injury that comes and goes.
Me too.
It sounded a lot like what I deal with on an everyday basis. And I was like, that's a problem. I deal with that every day.
So I was like, we competed a little different of a level than Carlton.
We do,
Also,
but
you're about to fight Andrew Tackett. It's like, it is a totally understandable injury
he
pull.
there was another comment made a little bit later on that made a little bit more sense. And if they would have led with that, I would have been a little bit better when he was like talking about his hand and how it's his dominant hand, and that how he couldn't use his dominant hand the same way that he normally could.
And if you're gonna fight Andrew Tackett,
and if
kind of a tool you're gonna need.
If that was what they led with, and not that my shoulder hurts, then
the editing kind of made you kind of like not in Carlton's corner, and then you hear him judge where they hear like, oh yeah, that makes way more sense. Andrew Tackett, like a fully healthy Elijah Carlton, is gonna have his hands full with Andrew Tackett. If you have one hand, that's too much
and then
to
he has
fight
like a
Andrew.
thumb on the other hand that's injured. And he has a normal jiu-jitsu body.
It makes sense that you're not going to fight Andrew Tackett. And then Andrew Tackett defeats to fight Jason Nolf. The funniest thing of the tournament happens. To me, not funny, haha, but like Andrew Tackett decides.
I don't know if that's the funniest, because I think the hey, my dude.
Hey, my dude, why didn't you tap?
Why didn't you tap is the funnier part.
It's funnier in a different way. And I go, no, that's not a haha funny.
Okay. But anyway.
Andrew Tackett decides to wrestle Jason Nolf. And I went, that's a bold strategy. Can't see how it plays off. And at one point, Jason Nolf goes, I'm a good wrestler. Double legs him, kind of slams him onto the top of the bowl for the event. And they reset, and it was good. But I was really impressed.
Yeah.
How well Andrew Tackett dealt with Jason Nolf. Because Andrew Tackett he was kind of doing the jiu-jitsu wrestler thing.
I don't know if I wonder if they were all in the same room at, because they're all in that Austin area.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they've ever wrestled each other before.
I would assume they have. I assume that Nolf has passed through Brazilian Fight Factory. I would assume that
and I think a little bit of Andrew is that he's almost still young enough that he's like bulletproof, or at least he thinks he's bulletproof, and he
for the amount of injuries that guy's had, man, that's crazy.
Because remember how he like jumped on the bull and like took the bull
and
out?
when he was on Who's Next,
and so he kind of has
that's also a Texas thing, and so he it's probably not his first time.
Yeah, he said that was the first time he ever.
Yeah, but you've seen it, and you've watched your entire life. It's like a not uncommon rodeo trick.
I just feel
in
like
Texas.
there's a little bit of like young machismo Is that the word they use for
That's
it?
absolutely the word. And I think that's
like
exactly the right
he
way to
just
put it,
doesn't
too.
give a shit, and he just stands in front of him. Where a lot of guys would be almost like,
They're going to be worried because it's Jason fucking Nolf. You're like, hey, man,
Exactly.
let's not decide to wrestle Jason Nolf. And Andrew Tackett's like, I'm going to try to wrestle Jason Nolf.
Yeah.
I was talking to my wife. We were on the way to training yesterday. And we were talking about the clip that's going around with KSI and Mighty Mouse.
Yeah.
And Mighty Mouse, years ago when he was still fighting, I think he's still in the UFC at that point, he talked about he always wanted to get kicked by Crow Cop full speed because... I'm going somewhere with this. It'll make sense. Because he goes, that's the worst it can be. He goes, no one can ever kick you harder than that. And so if I know what that feels like, I'll have like the highest essentially was like, I'll have the highest baseline ever. And like everything's going to be not as bad as that. Yeah. And so I'll be able to like know what the worst it ever could possibly be is. And we were talking about, I lost where I was going with this, but Andrew Tackett, it makes sense. Hey, man, Jason Nolf's one of the best wrestlers I'm going to run again.
Mighty Mouse wanted to get kicked in the leg by Crow Cop. I think he would get kicked across the mat by Crow Cop.
Probably, but like he would
be like, woo!
But the point is like, hey, man, I'm a world champion. I want to have that benchmark of like what the best this possibly could ever be is. It kind of makes sense that Andrew Tackett would go, yeah, man, why wouldn't I wrestle Jason Nolf here if I think that like I can learn or take something away? Like there's not going to be many guys
both of
that
them
are better.
Both of them have the power of Jesus with them.
They do. Good for them, baby. And he used that to...
They use the power of Jesus.
Dude, Nolf does a wrestler thing here. And Andrew stands in a certain way, and they wrestle back and forth. I think it goes into the second round.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with Andrew Tackett, like not just getting bulleted over by Nolf. Nolf snaps him down a couple times, but Andrew's very diligent with getting back up. Nolf doesn't decide to cover him. It was an impressive performance from Tackett. Wasn't winning any of the wrestling exchanges, but very much in and in front of Nolf in a way where Nolf, with a weaker competitor, would have absolutely, I think the technical term is dumpstered them.
Yeah.
Doesn't do that to Tackett. Then Nolf goes, hey man, you're standing kind of square, you're standing kind of open. This is an awesome opportunity for a fireman's carry, which is something we know Nolf likes to do. He did it at Carlton. And then Andrew Tackett goes, oh, cool, I'm really quick, and there's a reason why no one ever, except for you mentioned on the pre-show, Owen Livesey would do it occasionally, but a bigger weight class, slower guys, at 170, Nolf goes to fireman carry Andrew Tackett, and Andrew Tackett goes, cool, free rear naked choke entry. Yeah. And then is able to get to the back.
Yeah, he pulls basically like a...
crucifix.
Like a crucifix.
And then tacks down and gets his leg across to the body triangle like he always does. We've seen him do it before. And then he gets the rear naked choke. And it was just... it was unfortunate to see Nolf, like, not be able to stop himself from going for that because, like, it just doesn't work in the lighter weights in jiu-jitsu versus the highest level guys in the world because of that.
But you almost have to hit it so fast. You have to like clinch down on that forearm and hit it so fast that they go over your head before.
Yeah, you have to hit it like a throw. Yeah, you can't hit it like a tack out. You gotta hit it like a throw.
We were discussing it. It's kind of like you hit drop Sayanagis.
Yeah,
like you have to hit it so fucking fast they can't grab you.
And so well that like you have to get so in front of the guy in that technique. It can't be something I throw, catch him a little off guard because it's a long enough technique to make that full turn that all they have to do is just drop their legs and then triangle them and you're in a crucifix.
And the easier way to do it actually is like if somebody grabs an underhook on you, I'll go and grab that leg, but I turn it into like a high crotch because you can high crotch and then you just like go around the back.
You don't get backpacked by it,
but you can't get backpacked by it because you're not keeping yourself all stretched out. You're pulling that arm back in and going to your high crouch in there.
This was textbook if you were a super high level guy, how to counter a fireman.
Yep.
Again, it sucks that Nolf gets taken out like this, but it is kind of to be expected because that's a technique that he likes to do. And if there's anyone in the world that's going to counter it, it's going to be Andrew Tackett, Miki Gabao,
he also did
and Kade
what else did he do? Andrew was doing all kinds of weird, like jumping, like he tried to jump on his back from a couple,
Andrew's a wild, I cannot imagine. I'm curious in 4 years how much of a handful Andrew Tackett's going to continue to be for everyone. I can't wait.
In 20 years, how much arthritis he will have.
All of it. He's going to have all of it. We're going to be down for it. He's had a great career, and I'm excited to watch it.
He's going to be like one of the meows and just be like...
And he'll have a great time for it.
Yeah.
Next match, we have Danilo Moraes defeating Kevon Gonzalez. both on Team Mikey Moose. We're now in the semis, so we're having a lot of team fights because of how it's bracketed. Because you have the first round was everyone from different teams, and then now if you're potentially into a lot of the same team matchups.
Yeah.
This is Dinalo winning a decision. It was a lot of back and forth, but it was Dinalo getting the better of the leg exchanges.
Yeah.
Is really what it comes down to. This is the match that I actually was kind of thinking. I was like, I kind of want some commentary here.
Yeah.
It was a little quiet, and I would like.
Well, it was because both were Team Mikey, so Mikey didn't coach either.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't let any of his team coach either.
But I would, even if it's like a one-man commentary booth, like I don't need consistent commentary. But like it was weird to not have anything going on.
And they do it at the end when they recap the match at the very end. But that's a little too late. You almost need somebody that's doing it while it's happening.
Or like it was weird to not. It felt like there needed to be something there, and it makes sense because you don't have coaching. And I don't really want commentary. I just don't want silence. And I don't know what you would actually put there that would be better, because commentary doesn't actually work here. I like that it didn't have commentary, but it was weird to not hear
sometimes
coaching.
A little bit of music, just light music.
I mean, even if it's as much as it'd be weird, almost like what conversations the guys on the side are having of just like everyone's quiet, so there's nothing to do. I get that. It was just a little odd on the broadcast.
But you find that in tournaments. Like in tournament this weekend, it was quiet at times. Yeah, when people weren't.
And everyone's like, "Hey man, I can hear you really well." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm very loud when I coach. I'm very audible. That's one thing I have at least. I'm very audible when I coach. You're also very audible.
I am.
We coach together.
Yes.
I think we coached together before, but it's been a little bit.
It's been a bit.
We're both very loud. So we're both very audible, which is always helpful for the fight.
And then every once in a while, I look over at me like, "What the fuck?"
You look over me like, "Here's what that is." I'm like, "Awesome, we'll move on." But again, that's good coaching. So next match, we have there's two matches that happened today.
Yeah.
So we had Isaac Doederlein versus Carlos Henrique, and this is when the gross arm elbow dislocation happened.
They were also both Team Mikey.
Yeah.
So Mikey refused to coach either of them.
Which again kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
It'd be weird for him to coach Doederlein as his buddy when he didn't.
Yeah.
We're not gonna stop the show here. Apologies if you can hear a noise that just happened in the background. It'll run for a couple of minutes. I apologize if you can hear it. Hopefully you can't, but apologies if that did just come on. If you weren't hearing it and now you're hearing it, apologies for me calling it out. We have Doederlein, again, really in the same way that he was doing in his earlier matches, like going into the legs, looking for the feet off the back. And then Carlos doing a good job of preventing. Carlos hits a really nice counter step pass off of Doederlein's X guard entry that I thought was very, very good. And then they go into the second round, I think?
Yes.
Yes, round 2. And you see Carlos Henrique has lifted Doederlein's arm in almost what I would think about was going to be a weird omoplata entry.
Yeah.
It can be like a shoulder lock or like a Kimura grip. And he sits back and under Doederlein, getting Doederlein to come up into it while he is yanking essentially it's a Kimura, but it's like a reverse mirror lock.
Yeah.
He's lifting it out in a way. And
it's set up like an armbar at first. And then it's you find when people are really strong that they can kind of
they stand up and they straighten.
They can kind of bicep curl your
whole body.
So your whole body. So what you do is you learn that if you twist it, that it creates a different shoulder kind of rotation, so that you can then put the pressure.
And you can't lift as easily as well. What happens here is, and I can't really fault Isaac here, because what happens is he gets his elbow dislocated. Because Doederlein's trying to lift up and he's trying to extend the arm out.
Yeah.
And if you are tough enough.
And he has almost like a triangle on Doederlein's arm and head.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a different position to be in.
You can drop more of your body weight down into the arm, but he doesn't do it in a dropping way, which is why I think it was just Doederlein's trying to extend the arm out to alleviate the pressure. And then he's probably feeling like there's a lot of pressure there, but it's not super painful. And then he hits the limit of what his elbow can deal with pressure-wise, and the elbow just gives out. And then not Sanji, Saulo Ribeiro, Vitor Shalin, who's the referee for the match, comes over and Doederlein's in obvious pain because his elbow's dislocated. And he goes, what does he say? You have it quoted here?
He goes, I
Hey,
I said it earlier.
You did.
It was, hey man.
Why didn't you tap?
Why didn't you tap?
Or something like that. It just.
Oh, hey my guy.
Hey, my God, why didn't
Hey my guy. Why didn't you tap?
or something like that. And it was just like, and it wasn't like, and the way we're saying it off is very like arrogant and kind of mean. It wasn't that. It was sort of just like it was almost like a genuine question of like,
It was like
why, man? Why'd you do
it was
that?
like an old school Brazilian,
yes.
almost like dad coach that's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah,
but
like, hey, man, like, why,
yeah.
why, not that I'm mad at you, but like, why did you do that to yourself kind of answer? It was just it was a very funny exchange that they left in there. And we don't see a whole lot of that. I always hate talking about the show when guys get injured like this because it's
it was just a dislocation, so that's a lot easier to deal with than a break or
I know,
a
but
lot of
it's
other
still like
things.
I also like Isaac Doederlein, and it sucks to see like when you like certain guys, you've watched their career for a long time, you see them take an injury, it's just like that sucks. Like you seem like a nice guy, and it was just like you had a defense that just your elbow just let go on. And credit to Carlos Henrique, man, he had the pressure, it was good. If Doederlein's arm hadn't have let go, there's a big possibility he's still able to actually just finish this and actually like tear or break. But the whole interaction was just interesting at the end.
It's like, hey, my guy, why didn't you tap?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And then Doederlein is eliminated. Carlos Henrique moves on. That is for the lightweights. So now we basically have just the last two matches for the welterweights. We have a rematch of Andy Varela versus Davis Asare. They drew 2 times at
PGF.
Oh no, sorry, you have a bunch of rounds.
They've won against each other 3 times, twice on PGF.
Yes.
That both times went to a draw.
And then the Arizona Open, which that really famous clip of Andy Varela just torpedoing Davis Asare like off the mat essentially, and getting his back for 3 points to win.
No, that's not that one. What
am I thinking of?
Davis shoots on Andy. Andy just spins to his back and takes his back.
I think it was the Kyle Chambers one, or it's the...
I don't know. Andy has a couple ones because
Andy has a bunch of ones where he just speared guys.
There's that whole situation where he did that to some like purple belt, and then it was like a fight, and they started slapping each other and stuff.
There's that, but
anyway,
let's see.
Hey, my God,
this just happened today, so I'm like, I'm a little more fuzzy.
So anyway,
on exactly how it
in
played
this
out.
one. Mikey actually told Davis to jump full guard because he said put him in your full guard because then he can't really do half the stuff he wants to do.
Which is, again, great advice because...
round 1, it works.
Varela, wants to be super aggressive, super active, and Varela doesn't want to be super close to you unless he's past your guard.
Yeah.
And really on your back. Like, Varela is a guy that operates really well in that 3D space, that, like, open space around you because... he's quick, he's aggressive, and he'll drive, and his drive is usually good enough to get where he wants. If you just stifle that, and these guys have experience, they have, 3 matches at this point between each other, you kind of know the dynamics. Like, Davis Asare is a little bit of a less-known quantity now, and he plays... looks a little different match to match. Yeah. We know exactly how Andy Varela wants to play. Like, he's a very known quantity in this sport.
So, first round, that works. Asare almost keeps him in the guard for the entire round. And he controls the pace. He attacks his arms. He works with him. But by round 2, Andy's like, no, we don't do this anymore. And he sticks his knee up the middle. So then when he goes to jump, he's not standing fully up. He's crouched down. His knee's in the middle. So he can't lock his legs around him anymore. But then Asare's still able to kind of hold the position, kind of keep him in that range and work on him, but neither really get anything done. And then round 3 is when Asare just can't kind of keep that distance from him and hold on to him.
Because Asare is a guy, he tends to get a little more tired.
Yeah.
And Varela's a guy that doesn't. Just straight up doesn't. We've seen Andy tired, maybe versus Joseph Chen at main character.
Yeah.
We saw him get a little tired.
That place was hot as fuck.
But even then,
that was hot.
I can think of a couple matches that we've seen Asare get tired and slow down. I can think of that one match
we also
for Varela.
We've had Asare let his feet go and have bad leg lock defense. We've also seen him not make weight. So he's He's
a
been
little
all
more
over-
inconsistent
yeah.
here and there. Varella's just pretty ironclad most of the time. Again, pending some other kind of auxiliary stuff.
Yeah.
Competitively, pretty sound and pretty consistent.
Yeah. He did fall over a chair last night at a brawl that happened.
Another
at
fight
a,
for Andy Varela.
That a 10th Planet event.
But Andy takes that. He gets an anaconda on Asare, locks it, squeeze. It's a very standard. Again, it's funny. Another anaconda win. We just talked about this.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with the pit walls.
No.
But I'm curious because this was an open space. It was like down in the middle of the mats.
This is a situation where Asare went to turtle, and when he went to turtle, he just slid it in when he turtled because you kind of turtle into an anaconda if you already have your hands in that
down there
in the correct spot. So yeah, I don't think it was a pit wall as much as he just timed the. By round 3, he got the timing of how Asare
Sorry. Yeah.
how he turtles back to get his guard back.
And it makes sense. You give Andy enough time. Like, Andy is a guy in the slug format that had the rounds.
Yeah.
Did really, really well. Like, once Andy kind of figures out your timing, it becomes way, way harder to deal with him. And he's I think, weirdly a guy that tends to excel in longer matches because he eventually can force that opening. He can force your timing. He's quicker. He's bigger. He can usually make that work for him in a really interesting.
And some people, I think, have that ability. Like, I find that the more I roll with somebody, the more I figure out how they do things, and it makes more sense to me.
And you can modulate your pacing and timing to get whatever you want to go. So, anything else left on that?
I don't think so.
So, what we got tomorrow, again, you're going to get the show the next day. So, by then, we will have had the semifinal. We've had the finals matches.
Yeah, the finals are Wednesday.
Sorry, you'll be getting the finals today. We're not going to preview anything else. We're going to get Andy Varela versus Andrew Tackett. Super jazzed for that.
Yeah.
That should be fireworks. I'm going to go Andrew Tackett.
I'm going to go Tackett just
because he's
like
fucking Tackett, man. Like, go back and watch CJI, the semifinals.
I mean, but I could also see Andy Varela, like, I could see Tackett, like, going against Andy Varela, and Andy Varela just grabbing Tackett by his head and just, like, slamming him.
Yep. I could see I could see Andy Varela being a very mean gentleman in a way that, like, I think Tackett will be, again, I think
Tackett will giggle at him.
Yeah,
I think it'll be that kind of.
It's just not going to take that seriously. Andy's going to really try to get into him, and Tackett's just going to be like, I knew this was coming. I'm ready for this. This is kind of what I expected.
Because I think Andy also, in all of his matches, he would, like, be talking shit to the guys as he was rolling with them.
Since forever.
And
that's what Varela does.
And with Davis Asare, he was, like, kind of. He kept on saying, like, Davis, like, later in the matches is when Davis breaks down. Like, he'll break down later in the match. Don't worry. Like, I felt him break down. I know he's going to break down, you know? And it's almost like he tells you what he wants you to do, and then you just kind of follow it because...
He's a force, man.
Yeah.
I just don't think that will be the case with Tackett. I think Tackett
will giggle at him.
I do too.
Because he's used to brothers.
I don't think he's the middle brother.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be able to get into Tackett's head in the same way. But also, I think that physically, Varela and Tackett are very, very similar. They're both big. They're both strong. They're both very mobile. They're both very good back takers. Yeah. I see this match being almost a little more of like the Cade Rotolo versus Andrew Tackett match, where it's like if Andy Varela comes guns a-blazing, Tackett will meet him. Either of these guys can take this. I think in a scramble, Andy Varela can absolutely get Andrew Tackett's back and finish him. And in a scramble, Andrew Tackett can absolutely get Andy Varela's back and finish him. I kind of lean more towards Andrew Tackett because I think Andy Varela generally has a consistency of the way that he gets your back in the scrambles that is like very well schooled, very methodical. Andrew Tackett will have more shots because he is more unorthodox and unpredictable, and I think a little faster than Andy in the scrambles.
We've seen issues. Andy had issues before with. He went against the son of Achilles, and we saw him not be able to actually get his hooks in to be able to ride Achilles' back.
Yeah.
So there are ways that you learn to kind of negate what he's doing to you, especially if he mentally isn't screwing with you. And he's not going to break you down that way so that you start making mistakes.
Because that's how a lot of Varela gets. He gets into you, and he slaps you, he hits you, he makes the ref intervene.
Yeah.
Like, he just gets into guys' face
Where
and in their head.
if you embrace that, or like if you grew up like Achilles probably did with a dad who probably
with
did that.
Wagner.
Yeah.
Like, there's videos of them when they're kids, like him and Wagner are fighting in the living room, fighting.
Then I'm sure that it doesn't bother you at that point. Then you might not make the same mistakes, and you might be able to counter some of the things that he does. So I take it for Tackett for that reason. Besides the fact that
he's had a little more high level success consistently than Varela. Like, not a lot more, but just consistently the trials win, and just like he is just a little bit ahead usually of where Varela is in a lot of these. Just on tournaments they have done the same thing. Tackett has come out on top of that tournament. So on the other side, we have Daniel Moreno versus Carlos Henrique. I don't really know as much how I want to pick that. I'm more familiar with Carlos Henrique than I am with Danilo Moreno, but I like what I'm seeing from Danilo, and like this could very much go either way. I think this is going to be a less exciting match, unfortunately, than Tackett versus Varela. But I think Tackett and Varela could headline like a $10,000 card.
I think this match also ends up a lot like some of the earlier matches, because I want to say Danilo is a guard player that goes after your feet. Carlos seems to be a top player, but will play guard and go after your feet. And Carlos Henrique is the brother-in-law to Austin Oranday, and they train like every day together. So he knows how gentlemen that come after your feet behave and how they react. Unless what is it?
I need to hear the commentator say it a bunch.
Unless Danilo has the ability to like get so deep on Carlos that he is unable to get out, and then he like panics, or you create a situation where he has only late stage defense to get out of it, then you have the possibility of Danilo winning. But otherwise, what I've seen from Carlos is that he can kind of go anywhere. He came from Dream Art, which is like they're
real fucking good.
Yeah, real, and he's used to, being with a lot of top level people, beating the crap out of him probably all the time. So
no, it'd be nothing new. A guy like Carlos Henrique would be nothing new for him.
Yeah, and
so it'll be this is a tough one.
He beat Gianni Grippo very handedly.
Yeah, man.
And Doederlein breaking his arm off.
Yeah, man.
So
yeah, I kind of. It's kind of like you're on that hard side of the bracket, man.
Like he literally beat two very high level people. To come in where
Gi World Champion, no Gi World Champion, in Grippo and in Isaac.
Yeah, where Mauricio Rios was a brown belt Mexican MMA fighter, so it was definitely harder to put him away. And then
Kevon.
And then Kevon Gonzalez is a good level no-gi player, but still hasn't really made the same level as
Keith, Isaac,
Grippo. As some of the other gentlemen. Like, he hasn't been in that level of competition at this point. I think he has the ability to, but he's done more of a coaching position than go into really like hard competition. So I just see Carlos having the advantage in that situation, unless those matches have beat him up so much that he comes into this match not,
Or has a misstep, and then Danilo can absolutely break his foot with a toe hold. I think seeing Danilo take this with a toe hold from the bottom in the same way that we have seen, like, literally the toe hold that Clay finished on Fionn at Polaris a couple years ago, like that toe hold wouldn't surprise me to see him finish.
But it wouldn't surprise me Carlos lets his foot break.
And then gets out, and then boom.
Yeah.
I see Carlos taking this.
Yeah, because at this level of a match, I could also see either of them allowing themselves to break and just going through it.
Yep. So I'm going to go Carlos Henrique here based on that conversation. And then we have finals of Harrison versus Mikey Musumeci. I don't want to preview this too much. This is Mikey's to lose. This is very clearly Mikey's to lose. You look at on all areas, like, Mikey has been the champion. He's been the champion longer. He's the 4-time world champion, only American to do that. Harrison is very good, does have a good win over Baby Shark. Mikey has wins over pretty much everyone on the IBJJF side, and then a bunch of people in one championship, on one to see. Like, this is Mikey's to lose. I see Mikey leg locking Harrison.
Yeah.
Or potentially getting to his back off of a leg lock transition and choking him. Again, we haven't seen Mikey in a year.
Yeah.
So it could be, pick and choose, but Mikey looks like he's in good shape. He looks fiery. He looks ready for it.
Yeah.
He knows this is another big opportunity. Like, you wouldn't have brought Mikey Musumeci from one championship unless you thought he was going to be the guy.
Yeah.
I just think everything about this is pushing me to think that Mikey is going to take this by submission and do it pretty clear. I know we did see Mikey versus someone on Fight Pass one time.
Yeah.
He had like one match. And it was close. It was I'm blanking on who it was. Not important, but that's my take, Miranda. Do you have any additional kind of pieces that you think?
No, I know that that Harrison has beat a lot of the same gentlemen that Mikey has won against and won against. But Harrison's also a newer.
He's been a black belt less than 2 years, I think.
Yeah, and he's been in the circuit for long enough, but I don't think he has the same kind of knowledge or experience that Mikey does at the level he's competing at.
This is a young gun
versus
your older, now established long-term champion. Again, you can always fight sports. You always have the young eat the old eventually, but I just think this is a little too much too soon. For Harrison, not too much too soon, but I think that I would be surprised to see Mikey lose this one.
Yeah, me too.
More than anything.
I agree.
So that'll be fun. That'll be the last BJJ. We'll cover all the rest of it next week. We're in any kind of closing thoughts before we move on to Polaris?
Nope.
So let's move on to Polaris 32, the ladies squads events, Team USA versus Team Europe, happening on June 28th, so 5 days from this recording. We also have Ono Flanagan versus Magomed Antalarov, and we have Ellis Younger versus Tom Berry, Owen Jones versus Carlos Coles. We're not going to have time to preview those. Very, very fun European matchups. The teams for Europe and America have changed pretty significantly. We did a huge research.
One changed.
Well, the U.S. team changed significantly, and the captain for Europe changed significantly. So I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
The captain for Team Europe was Fionn Davies. Is now Nia Blackman. She had a very close match with Helena Kravar a year ago or something like that, right around there. We were like, we were very impressed with her performance. Again, Kravar took that match. Kravar is the champion for Polaris. On Team US, we have Taylor Ellis Hillshaw, who just won the Fury women's tournament at 125. We have Brianna St. Marie. We had Tubby Aliquin. She is now replaced by Alana Santiago.
No, Alliance has always been in. The two at the end are the replacements.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So Jasmine Hosha is out as well, replaced by Alex Enriquez.
Yeah.
Really good replacement. And then Tubby Aliquin has been replaced by Elizabeth Mitrovic.
Yeah.
Who's going to be on the larger side for the women. Elizabeth just placed at the World Championships in the gi.
Elena Santiago's been on it since the beginning.
Yeah, I was reading and I just screwed that up.
No, I used my old list that I did last week, and then I just crossed out the names that were the ones.
We'd still have who was there. Yeah, the Team US is still a super strong team.
Yeah.
On Team Europe, we had Fionn Davies replaced by Nia Blackman. We have Josef Mondig. We have Anna Svedsen. We have Sula May Lowenthal, Margaret Cicerelli, and Selma Vick.
Yep.
Their team has not changed. Again, there's not a whole lot to preview here, realistically, because what this is going to be is it going to be a squad-style, quintet-style event. Yeah. I love how they're changing the rules. I love the ability for these people to win decisions now, so it's not just a draw and you lose. You are fighting to win the decision here. We don't have a bracket.
Yeah.
It is going to be, they run it like a sport, like a traditional ball sports event, like a soccer match, essentially, where you have 80 minutes total in time, 8 or 90 minutes. I forget what the time frame actually is. Maybe 60 minutes.
Okay.
And it's run in 2 halves. And then you have essentially as many matches and you cycle through the teams as many times as you need to until all of the time has expired. And each match, I thought they were 8 minutes. That might have been 6 minutes, but there's some length of time. And you basically will try to score like a decision is a certain amount of points, a submission is a certain amount of points.
Yeah.
And then your team overall is trying to get the most amount of points overall. It's a really cool format. It's fun. but there's just not like I don't want to preview Kravar versus the rest of Team Europe, and then Taylor versus the rest of Team Europe, and then Alex versus. It's just we don't know how everything lines up and matches up. I will say that overall, the credentialing for Team North America is stronger.
Yeah.
Especially with the loss of Fionn. Like it's Team Europe has a real tough fight. But again, that's awesome. I'm really happy that
you also have competitors that we don't have as much film on.
Yeah.
So you have the ability for them to maybe be a little more interesting. Because they might have something that the other team has no idea that they,
I didn't know that they did this as much as they did. And you're like, oh yeah, they did it a little bit here, and then there's less time to study the other team and study all the tape footage from the other team, whereas a lot of Team US is like very well established. There's a lot of footage. You know what Elizabeth Mitrovic is gonna do. You know what Brianna St. Marie is going to do. You very much kind of know what Helena Kravar is going to do. You can watch her ADCC runs and like, oh yeah, that's what she's going to do here. You can watch Elizabeth Mitrovic and Alex's trials runs.
Are they allowing one person to stay in, or it's new people every single round?
It's the same style like squads. Like if you win, you stay in. I think you can sub like a sports event, but again, they keep changing the rules. And I will say, although it makes it a little harder for us to cover, I have been really happy with every rules change that Squads has made.
Yeah.
Like consistently, I think that they're just improving the rules.
Because my only issue is you put in Helena Kravar and she beats everyone.
And then you go to the next person. Then you go, and then it keeps like, it's not just a quintet where everyone's eliminated.
Yeah.
You can run your team again, and like I really like it because the 3 or 4 of them that they've done have been really fun and really engaging and entertaining. And so like, I'm down for the format. It's a little like non-traditional, but it makes for good television. It makes for a good evening or good afternoon for us of watching this event. And so like, I'm down for it. And prelims start 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern time, and the event starts at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, which is a great start time. I'm gonna be at Quintet for Rachel, but like overall, it'll be a lot of fun to watch. Any other kind of comments or notes that you have on that event?
Nope.
So that does it. Next week will be UFC and Polaris, and then we have what else? Where's someone else coming after that?
We have
something major's coming. I'm just
we have
blanking
BJJ
on.
Stars. We have an event for them. We have a Who's Number One.
That's coming down the pipe, isn't it?
Yeah, that's in Miami. That's on like the 27th. American Nationals we don't cover.
Yeah, typically.
There was a Pitt's Mission thing that was over the weekend that we didn't cover that had Pat Downey in it and a couple other people.
And Paige Vet was on that one as well.
Yeah, she beat Maria.
I can never get a last
Rufado.
name. I think it's Rufado.
And then, like I said, we had the fight break out at, I think it was Submission Series. It was like in the dark.
Yeah.
If you want to watch, Andy Varela posted his commentary of the fight, which is pretty hilarious because he's like, and then I go and I fall over the chair. And he it's something. So
yeah, that's what's coming up right now.
Yeah.
And then interesting. So for the schedules, we're going through the schedule right now. We're in the outro section of the show. Flow now has a tag button for streaming on Flow.
But wouldn't everything on the list be streamed?
I am guessing that CJI will most likely be included on this list.
But not be streamed on Flow.
And not be listed as streamed on Flow. I'm guessing that's why that tag button is there now.
Yeah.
Where they are potentially actually going to do what we used to do on the Grappling Rewind website years and years ago, which has a general event list of all of the events coming out that are pro events, and now you can see which ones are streaming on Flow and which ones are not.
Yeah.
That would be a very interesting thing that we wanted from Flow for, again, we wanted it so much, I built it into the website back when we used to like manage our own. I used to actually update the grapplingrewind.com website. That's crazy. That would be a huge development. So that's all I got going on this week.
Yeah, that's it.
And then, that's it.
It's 1,000,000 degrees over here on the east coast of the United States.
Very warm.
It's very warm.
About to go train, and so I'd be sad about that. But that's it.
Yeah.
As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Miranda.
And we got the Grappling Rewind. See that, Matt, what it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google Plus.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
Let us know.
reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.